Tales of True Crimes and Strange Weapons Part 4. This time we're going to deal with the blowgun, a strange but truly ancient weapon. Before we get to that though, let me just say thank you to Eric Develers, who very kindly supported the making of this book here, mine. It has an entire chapter of blowgun crimes, and in this video we're going to touch on a different one. I mentioned that the blowgun is ancient. Well, it's really ancient. It goes all the way back into prehistory, being invented in the Stone Age. They got their start in Southeast Asia and spread from there to basically the world, or at least we think so. Independent invention is not out of the question, especially when it comes to the Americas. But a real oddity about the blowgun is that it hasn't been used much as an anti-personnel weapon throughout history, certainly not relative to how long it's been around and how widespread it's been. But yes, it has been a weapon of warfare and I guess on occasion, personal defense / offense, but it's just practically nothing compared to similar tools, meaning what? Like the bow and arrow. It was also invented in prehistory as a hunting tool, just as the blowgun was. These things were made for getting your dinner, but use of the bow and arrow against people, I mean, my God, it's almost hard to even fathom how much there's been. And the exact same thing can be said about the spear. And now the blowgun was never as widespread as either of the last two instruments I just mentioned, but it was probably more widespread than you think. You have the semi-famous uses and users like in Central and South America and Borneo, where it was a mainstay of war. By the way, you also have Japan. Now, when people hear Japan and blowgun, this is of course the first thing they think of. Well, actually the only. But anyway, no, there's a much more historically grounded and documented use. But it was, and of course, because this is Japan, still is to this day, more of a sporting activity, kind of akin to what archery is in the modern world. Now, did ninja ever use blowgun against someone, like in an actual assassination, like something out of a movie? Probably. Check out this image. Medieval manuscript. So we've got a blowgun user, you can see him in kind of the center of the frame, in the European Middle Ages. Central and South America were name-checked earlier and have more famous use of this tool, but it also existed in North America. The Cherokee version was called the Breath of Death. And so you can see there's plenty of opportunity throughout history for this thing to get used often against people. People have a habit of using just about anything they can against each other, but it never really caught on that way. One reason for that, of course, is the lack of power, the lack of stopping power, but creators got around that a long time ago by poisoning the darts. So there is going to be an inherent limit on its use based on geography, the flora in a certain locale. But anyway, if an object, speaking in terms of the big picture, barely got used against people older, more violent times, then how often does it get used in modern, supposedly, more civilized times? Well, not very often, but it does happen. Because these things are still made. Modern versions are relatively cheap, a lot of fun, by the way, and easily manufactured on your own for practically nothing if you want to go that route. I mean, seriously, you just get a PVC pipe, some nails, some wadding or paper, and you're good to go. I showed the results my kids and I were able to produce with a makeshift version on a previous video, an old video. Now, when you research this kind of crime nowadays, what you're going to get is mostly animal cruelty, unfortunately, with sporadic targeting of people, usually in a sniper-like fashion. Unluckily for the victims, the blowgun is very ambush-friendly. It's got almost silent operation, a good accuracy, and surprising range. A common trend you'll see in the news over the years, it's a real consistent thing. At some point somewhere, there's going to be a brief shooting spree that police look into. Someone's running around taking pot shots at folks with their blowgun. And that leads us to our crime, which was affected by these two knuckleheads. It was in the vicinity of Houston, Texas, where they decided to take a couple of shots at folks walking into a Walmart. As you can probably imagine, they are far from being the only teenagers who ever thought it would be funny to shoot at strangers with a blowgun. These two went exceptionally low, though, by targeting a 10-year-old boy and a 72-year-old woman who was riding a motorized scooter. I mean, come on. Also, they were not exactly criminal masterminds in front of a Walmart. Obviously, there's gonna be surveillance cameras. They were shooting from their vehicle, so it wasn't that hard for police to check the footage. Notice that this same white pickup truck was present both times near the victims, and you can guess the rest. You can also guess that both victims survived, of course. blowgun darts sans poison, are almost never lethal, per the research I did for the whole chapter I've got in my book dedicated to blowgun crimes. But if that's the case, why am I showing you a still shot here of a video that says a man killed a bear with a blowgun? Well, because he did. And other sizable game like deer have been brought down with them. So what explains the discrepancy here? The type of dart. Both ancient times and today, the most common darts are just needles. Needles with something on the back to catch the air. In the old days, it was something nice and fluffy, some kind of plant material, thistle. Nowadays, it's things like this. And side note, you would think this would kind of hurt the aerodynamics, wouldn't you? But they don't, at least not enough to make an appreciable difference. But back to the topic of differing dart types, an alternate to the needle type is the razor dart or broadhead, which you're seeing here. Now remember, this is much smaller than it looks like in the picture. This is just a dart that fits into that narrow blowgun. The cutting area is therefore going to be pretty narrow, but still enough to do real damage. I mean, if they can bring down man-sized or larger animals in the wild, then imagine what they could do to a person. Also imagine, as tiny as this thing is, it hitting a person at hundreds of feet per second. Up to 400 from what I saw. Well, hopefully you're a little bit surprised. Like when I first brought up the topic about bringing down large animals, you might have assumed that people were poisoning modern blowgun darts to do that, but nope. And very luckily for the modern victims of this sporadic crime, it seems like users almost never, well, I should say never, I couldn't find one instance, use razor darts. They also fortunately seem to never poison their darts. And lastly, I'll say that the blowguns aren't always of the professional variety, the retail variety like this one here. They can be homemade. Like I talked about earlier, these are easy to construct if you're going to do a makeshift version. And that is what Dartman from 1990 New York City used when he went on his shooting spree, where he ended up hitting 53 different women before they finally caught him. The quote-unquote Dartman story was a sensation in the New York City press at the time, as you can imagine. And his ammunition, by the way, were just sewing needles with a little bit of wadding on the back to catch the air. And he used something no bigger than a straw as his tube. So obviously he was shooting from really close up, but you know, crowded, busy street, who's gonna notice where it came from? And just for fun, this takes us back to ninjas. Speaking of just for fun, when I Googled, Google image search ninja blowgun, this image came up. Anyway, as far as I know, there's not one piece of, hard historical evidence that ninja used blowguns to assassinate anyone, but the lore states they did. And that would make sense for the technology of that day. If you wanted to hide in some bushes and kill someone when they walk outside of their house or whatever, that'd be a great method. But anyway, the lore also states they had a miniature version, like a straw-sized version, so that they could shoot somebody from real up close, and again, discreetly, if it was maybe kind of a crowd scene. You would not be in your ninja pajamas for that, you would be dressed as a regular person, and I do believe ninja existed, and I would think that the great majority of the time, they were dressed as regular people, or dressed the way the people around them were dressed, and not wearing these pajamas that would make you stand out. I mean, even if you were sneaking into the enemy's castle to assassinate someone or steal something, you would want to be dressed like someone who lives in that castle in case you are seen. Especially at a distance, you would just look like one of the guards or whatever. And why would you instead wear an outfit that would immediately make you recognized as some kind of outsider and or someone who's skulking around doing something they shouldn't? It's pretty silly. So anyway, that was a rant and an aside, but the point is modern confirmed stories, and not just the Dartman, but other ones I looked into, do verify that you can use a very tiny blowgun as opposed to the typical, which would be like this one here, a hunting one, to get something as small as a sewing needle embedded into someone. I mean like inches deep, which would then be enough to deliver poison. So that kind of super up-close, super discreet assassination method is at least possible. Anyway, once again, thanks to Eric very much for backing the production of my book, and that is it for this installment. Bye.